Our third reading comes from Luke's Gospel, chapter 13, just a few short verses, 31 through 35. At that very hour, some Pharisees came and said to him, "Get away from here, for Herod wants to kill you." He said to them, "Go tell that fox for me. Listen, I am casting out demons and performing cures today and tomorrow, and on the third day I will finish my work. Yet today and tomorrow and the next day I must be on my way, because it is impossible for a prophet to be killed outside of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you are not willing. See, your house is left to you. I will tell you, you will not see me until the time comes when you say, 'Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord.'" Now may God bless the reading and the hearing and the living of this word. Well, at this point in Luke's gospel, Jesus is up against the systems and structures of the Roman world. He's being assured that he's wanted in Jerusalem by Herod, and Herod is the guy who got John the Baptizer's head on a platter, so Herod's goal with Jesus is no secret. But Jesus' response isn't about his own safety. His response has some anger in it. And that anger is part of his heartbreak. It reflects his grief and empathy, not for himself, but for the people who are either trapped in the clutches of those systems and structures or actively participating in propping up the systems and structures because they lack the imagination or fortitude to tear down the old that they know and create something new and better in its place. How often I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, he cries. It's quite the simile for Jesus. Jesus as the mama hen. And the best story I know about a mama hen is one that I've shared here several years ago, so I'll not tell the entire story again. But in case you haven't heard it, this is a story about Liza, and she just might be the best depiction there is of what Jesus is talking about. So whether you're hearing it for the first time or second, listen to this story as told by Joseph Tower. He was featured in a PBS documentary called The Natural History of the Chicken, and he described the scene like this. As I stood one morning looking out over the field beyond our kitchen window and absently watching the scattered groups of chickens going about their routine, I saw the entire community of chickens freeze. Every motion and every sound seemed to stop in mid-cluck. Whatever form of communication was used, it was instantaneous and unquestioned. The total population of chickens scattered across the field reacted with one mind as a blur of feathered bodies dove beneath any available cover: wheelbarrows, wood piles, bushes, small trees. And I knew that this activity indicated the close presence of a hawk. Then something caught my eye. It was Liza, snow white, a standout in any field. She reacted instinctively as all the others had. All movement seemed to grind into slow motion, as if in a different dimension of time. I saw the sweep of a dark shadow streaking across the ground on a direct line for convergence with Liza. I saw the look of panic in Liza's eyes as she started to run for the overhang of the chicken house, and suddenly the same thought struck us both. The babies. I vicariously lived the agonizing moment with Liza as she broke stride and turned back to the 6 tiny chicks, still pecking in the grass, oblivious in their infancy to the event happening around them. With one command from Liza, the babies instantly rushed beneath her outstretched wings. Liza settled in over them, flattening herself into the grass as much as possible, and the look of panic in her eyes was gone. I've tried to interpret the expression I saw come over her. Was it resignation? Perhaps surrender? Was it releasing and putting the outcome into the hands of a higher power? Into my field of view from the window came a brown bolt from the sky. The shadow and the patch of white blended almost instantaneously into one point. The hawk had struck with such force that an explosion of white erupted from the ground. Then, with the grace and beauty of God's creation and without breaking stride, the hawk continued on. A trail of white feathers fell from clutched talons as the hawk disappeared through the trees. It was over. Stunned and amazed at the swiftness of change, I left the kitchen and headed for the point of impact, hoping that perhaps the babies had survived the hit. As I slowly and reluctantly walked toward the spot, I was impacted by the immensity of what I had perceived to have happened. I had just witnessed a chicken perform a deed that would make headlines if the same act had been performed by a human. I had observed an individual make a truly life and death decision. Liza had overcome the so-called survival instinct and with precision of forethought offered her life for another. I stood looking down at the pile of feathers in the grass and weeds. Leaning over, I gently probed for any of the tiny, fragile chicks that might be in the grass. I touched the mound of feathers. A startling and unexpected thing happened. The pile of feathers sprang to life, and an angry and nearly nude Liza, with a ruffle of her few remaining feathers, marched off with her family as if nothing had happened. The hawk had missed, apparently misjudging the depth and thickness of her protective coat just as I had. As I watched Liza and her chicks calmly continue with their routine of the day, I realized I could never think of a chicken in the same way again. I now see them for the individuals that they are, and yet I feel this oneness that we all share. I was able to experience, if only for a split second of terror, a moment of total togetherness with Liza. I was able to feel through Liza a spiritual connection with the Creator, this shining moment when we recognize our true potential and the Spirit of God working in each of us. Jesus could have used any image to express his love and affection for his people, and he goes with a hen gathering her brood under her wings. Jesus, the mama hen, spreading her wings out to stand between the Caesar and unfairly taxed peasants, tucking those cast out by religious leaders beneath warmth and protection of her feathers. The exhausted, the overwhelmed, the strung out, the fearful, there's plenty of room underneath those wings for everyone. But that's not quite what happens in this text, is it? Jesus cries out, "How often have I wanted to protect you under my wings, and you were not willing." If the season of Lent is a time to remember who we are created to be, a time of releasing everything that blocks us from honoring the image of God within ourselves and within one another, that means it's also a time of truth-telling. Not only must I ask myself the question, when have I been unwilling to accept the protection of Jesus' wings over the hunting foxes and hawks of this world. I must also ask myself as a pastor and as a person of faith who continues to participate in the structures of church and religion, when have I failed to understand our collective identity as a mama hen, following the path of the ultimate mama hen and choosing instead the path of Herod or the path of empire or the path of the fox or the path of the hawk? And just to be clear, I don't take all the weight of that question on myself. I'm one faith leader among thousands, and I stand in the line of centuries of tradition. But we got to know which side of these feathers are we on. If communities who claim the name of Jesus are meant to be shaped and formed by the path and the way of Christ, where do we find ourselves in this narrative? Can we say we aspire to be a mama hen, offering protection and comfort and provision for a vulnerable brood? In this season of reflection, let's not answer too quickly. Let's sit with the discomfort of these questions. Acknowledge where we collectively fall short in the provision we provide, and also acknowledge the times when we have been unwilling to accept that protection, unwilling to be vulnerable and be cared for as a chick, unwilling to listen to the warning voice of Christ because it might cost us too much, unwilling to turn our backs on the foxes and hawks because really they have good hearts and they're very nice people, unwilling to disassociate ourselves with the powers and principalities that often offer a much more immediate payoff than the long and winding road of Jesus the Christ. And here I am asking one more thing of you, and my friends, I know many of you are tired. I know many of you are beyond tired. You have carried too much for too long while holding your head up and smiling and pretending that your bones don't ache beneath the weight of it all. The world is tired. We can't mentally or emotionally handle the realities of what's happening in Ukraine right now. We still have blue tarps on roofs all across the city from Ida. There are still flattened lots where houses used to be across South Louisiana. Nancy Sanders is in Ironton this morning representing us at a church in their worship service. Head into Lake Charles and you'll see that not nearly enough has changed since Hurricane Laura passed through. Head up to Minneapolis and you'll still see the "I can't breathe" signs reminding us of George Floyd's life. Head down to Ferguson, Missouri, and you'll see the impact of protests for month after month, demanding that the United States value Black lives simply as much as we do white ones. That's not to mention all those places where there have been tornadoes and flooding. That's not to mention Breonna Taylor. Now step into Florida, but don't say gay, because any teaching or acknowledgement of LGBTQ history or identity or existence has now been banned by state legislation, while parents of trans kids in Texas are spreading their wings as far as they can and mama henning all over that state as Republican politicians showboat at the very real risk of death of trans boys and girls, trans men and trans women, because GOP leaders want to erase their identities. We're tired. And that doesn't even begin to speak to your own personal life. Speaking of the weight of dementia and Alzheimer's and terrifying diagnosis that has hit your family, mental illness, your own, my own, our children's, our parents, our loved ones, chronic debt and never enough money, loneliness, and isolation, and 2 full years today of the COVID-19 pandemic in the United States. Jesus is speaking into this real stuff. Jesus looks out on all of this and said, "How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings." I want to be willing, y'all. I want to be willing to imagine another way to live in this world. I want to be willing to imagine that the foxes and the hawks don't win. I want to be willing to give my life to becoming a mama hen, to fostering a mama hen community where we bring in the stressed out and strung out and fearful and vulnerable, and we offer real, true refuge and community beneath Jesus' wings and ours. I want to be willing, whatever that means, learning to receive protection and care and comfort. That's hard for a lot of us. Giving up my own need for control and maintaining appearances and ego and whatever it is that prevents us from saying no. I want to be willing to reject the powers and principalities that threaten the baby chicks, thereby putting myself in the line of fire. I don't know if I'm there yet, but I want to be willing. May we be willing.